Hello students, this is a help video for Unit 5 Lesson 2, the quick check question number 5, which is about the standard form of a quadratic function. So this question takes what you've learned about quadratic functions and applies it to a real-life word problem. So you live near a bridge that goes over a river. So the information I can get from that, okay, is that we have a bridge that's going over a river. And even if you didn't know anything about the shape of quadratic functions, we know bridges typically, look something like this. Okay. Now, from your knowledge from this lesson, we know that this general U shape is the shape we see in quadratics. Okay, and that these quadratic functions have some key points. So similar to our linear equations, you can still be looking for your intercepts. And then we're adding a new kind of important point, which is our vertex. Okay, remember your vertex is always going to be your minimum or your maximum point. So in this case, it is our maximum. Okay. The underside of the bridge is an arch that can be modeled with the function. So they're being nice and they gave us the equation. So this is the equation that models and matches this arch here, where x and y are measured in feet. So they're going to ask us two questions about how high above the river is the bridge. So the highest point, we just said it's the max, is going to be here at the vertex. So when they ask you how high above the river is the bridge, what they're really asking you to find is your vertex. Our vertex has 2 points, an x and a y. The x would give me this distance and the y is that height. So I'm looking for the vertex, and more specifically I'm looking for just the y point on the vertex. Okay, let's get to our next question. How long is the section of the bridge above the arch? So how long is this bridge section above the arch? So the length, they're asking for your x. Okay, so this is a very tricky function to graph because it's 0.000475, 0.851. So if you're graphing it by hand, you're going to have a hard time. So what I definitely recommend you do is go to your calculator, type in your equation, okay, and hit graph. Now, when I'm looking at the graph, that doesn't match what I know. We know that the graph really should have this arch and be a quadratic because there's an x squared here. So why isn't the calculator showing me that? Well, we need to change our window. So our window right now, your calculator is zoomed in on just this spot here. And if you just look at this part of the line, it looks like a straight line. What we need to do is expand our window to include more of the x's and more of the y's. Okay, and this is where the work you did about domain and range help you out. So I want to specify and change that window. So I look at my x's, and we know that the length can only be positive. Doesn't make sense to have a negative number. So my x has to be greater than or equal to 0, and same thing for the y. Okay, so this side is our minimum. It's not going to go any lower than 0. It's not an underwater tunnel or anything. We're at only positive heights. And then what do I set for my maximums? You could kind of do a guess and check. So I'll go to my window and I want to change the x minimum to 0 and the x maximum to 0. I don't really know how big the numbers are supposed to go though, so maybe I change the maximums. Let's try 100. Okay, and I'm kind of seeing a curve, so maybe they need to be 200. Okay, I'm still seeing a straight line. So I'm going to help myself out, and I'm going to look at the numbers in my answer choices. And they have numbers in the thousands. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my window, and I'm going to change it to 2,000. A little bit bigger than the biggest number I see here. And now I can see that nice arch I was looking for. Now when I'm looking at the graph now, I notice there's a lot of Y here. You know, my height is a lot bigger than it needs to be. So let's go back to our window. I want to cut this number down. So let's try 500. All right. So I've got a nice clean picture of my quadratic. So we said we want that vertex, so I want this middle point. You can find it in two ways. You can hit trace, and it'll give you your X and Y. Or you can go to your table and start looking where your numbers keep getting bigger. They hit a max and then come back down. With this one, it's not as helpful because, again, you're talking in the thousands. So unless you want to click this button 1,000 times, I would stick with just hitting the trace button. So what do we notice now that we're looking at the trace button? Where is our vertex? It looks like it's about, the Y is 380 something. And again, if you peek at your multiple choice, it's 381.6 is really what they're rounding it to. That's the height. So let's look at our options, and I want to cross some stuff out. So this one, the bridge is about almost 2,000 feet above the river. That's nope. Not an option. The bridge is 1,000 above the river. Nope. The bridge is about 381.6 above the river. That's right. The bridge is about 381.6. So I'm looking at options C and D. Let's check the length. Okay. Now, if you look at your multiple choice, the length at the vertex is 895. Okay. And then where does this 1,700 come from? They're telling you that if you keep going all the way down, okay, that is the entire length. So let me redraw this with the information we have. So X is 0 is where your bridge starts, and it comes back at 1,791,582 feet. Here's our vertex. The length is 895.79, and our height was 381.16 feet. Okay. So our height we've got down, you know, that's the highest point. This question asked us about how long is the section of the bridge above the arch. So your answer should be 895.79, and the height is here. If they asked you for the entire length of the bridge, it would be 1,791.58. Okay? So you are going to see this question again. I believe there's one on your sample work, and the same question pops up again on the test. So just make sure you go through the steps, graph the equation, adjust your window, okay, for where you think the minimum and the maximum should be, and then you're looking for your vertex and your intercepts, okay, and then which one, you know, what your answer is going to depend on what they're specifically asking you for. So make sure you read the entire question clearly, highlight the important information, draw out a picture, you know, write down your equations, and you should be able to get this one right.